Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are now joined once again here with Thomas Bergvik, and he is, of course, a nationally certified counselor, licensed also professional counselor, and so much more. Friend of the show, good to have you back here. It's been a while. How's everything?
Okay. The reason I haven't been here is because I had surgery back on February 14th on my ankle.
How are you feeling?
Feeling okay. Just going to be basically on one leg and a scooter for the next, well, I guess I can't drive until the end of April.
May I ask what happened? Do you mind sharing?
It was a scheduled surgery. I've had arthritis in my ankle for quite a while, and it just got worse. And they finally decided, they also saw a cyst in there.
Oh, wow.
And they finally decided I finally got it done, and then they found a tumor, which turned to be not malignant, thank God. To make a long story short, I'm looking at probably 6 weeks dealing with my knee on a scooter type of deal, and then after that they're going to put me in a boot, and then I'll hopefully start walking after that.
Wow. All right. Things could always be worse, right? Always look at the positive. Someone could always have it worse. And as a mental health counselor, I know you know that. And just a quick little background for those that may not know, Bergvik Counseling Services, that's your website. And just tell us a little bit about what you do. And I know the topic of relationships is going to be.
I provide mental health and substance abuse services to my clients. I specialize in relationships, and I'm working towards being certified in sex therapy. Every once in a while I have people coming in for anger management, as I mentioned, substance abuse, and depression, anxiety, and so forth. So I had a long experience working in this field, and I really enjoy my job. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Enjoy being able to help people. So
and you're based out of Connecticut, correct?
In Hamden, just outside of New Haven. And we've got, it's a nice, not too bad an area to be working out of. So not too far from, like I said, I got my undergraduate at Quinnipiac University, so I'm not too far from there either.
And you serve the people of Connecticut, or can you also work with people out of state?
Connecticut. I'm licensed in Connecticut. I know during the pandemic, they allowed clinicians from out of state to be able to practice in other states without necessarily going through the licensure procedure. But I think once things get back to normal, it'll be just Connecticut.
Okay, so let's talk about relationships today. What in particular do you want to get into?
Well, I think one of the things that when I talk to people about relationships is that I have, I think there's three things important for a relationship to be successful. Trust is a big one, communication, and also the ability to forgive each other, because we all make mistakes in life, and especially in a relationship, we're going to have our ups and downs. I've got a painting in my office that reflects how ships go through tough waters, and I think that's true for life, and definitely with relationships. And it's important to be able to steer through the tough times so you can get through to the better times ahead. So that's a quick analysis. I get clients coming in. Most obvious, I think that's the one that people think about the most, is when somebody cheats on their partner. Sometimes there's physical abuse, sometimes it's verbal abuse, psychological abuse. I deal with all of that, and the bottom line is that any kind of abuse is not allowed. I think that's a given. I basically try with most of the abuse comes from women. Sometimes, from men towards women, and sometimes women can be abusive as well. But the bottom line is, whoever the victim is, I try to work with them in terms of acknowledging what's going on and maybe helping them give the strength to make a decision about whether the relationship's worth continuing or moving on.
Got it. So a lot of this, your focus is couples relationships, right?
Yes,
And life is all about relationships. So you're working with
absolutely.
spouses, girlfriends, families,
Mhm.
children, parent relationships, or what do just
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I do. I don't do a lot of families, but I do them.
okay.
In fact, there's a family that I'm working with that's in New York right now that I've been working with. And basically, the whole goal there is to help them get along better, and to try to hopefully mend fences and be able to communicate better about about how they want the relationship to continue within the family. So yeah, I mean that goes without. And I say, a relationship is a relationship is a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and what goes for couples also goes in business. You can't have a relationship in a business setting with partners if you don't have trust, you don't have communication, because it's a quick way to basically sink a business. So I sometimes talk about that as well.
Great. Any tips or stories and experiences that you want to share with us about relationships to guide us today?
Um, Interestingly, I have a new client that came in yesterday. Is going to become a couple. His fiance wanted him to come in first to kind of assess how we would get along, and I think the session went pretty well. And in his case, he came in saying that he was caught having looked at, they're engaged now, looking at porn, and also he had been investigating into dating sites. And I asked him questions like, especially when it comes to the dating sites, and has he had any second thoughts about his engagement? And he said no. It was just, something that he thought he could just do until I think it was basically he was burning time until they got married. But the problem is that he's doing something. So this is where I can talk about communication being very important. It's not so much what he did than it is the fact that he didn't talk to his fiance about it.
So
people have affairs. When people have affairs, what's the problem? The problem is not so much the sex as the fact that they didn't talk about it.
mm-hmm.
I mean, nowadays people talk about all kinds of lifestyles and relationships, open marriages, closed, traditional marriage, traditional relationships, whatever it is, BDSM. The bottom line is that you need to communicate. And the thing that I find most interesting is that couples don't talk about sex. And my response to that is,
yep.
and my response to that is, if you're not talking about sex with your partner, who are you talking to about it?
Yeah.
Because we all have fantasy lives. We all have, ideas about different things that we would like to try in the bedroom. So why aren't you talking about it? And so that's the thing that it just like, I really, really encourage people to start opening up to each other. Bottom line. And in that particular case, he mentioned that his fiance is very insecure about her body, which I know is not unusual for many women, but in order for them to be able to allow themselves to express themselves in the fullest way possible in a sexual encounter, part of that is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and like what you're seeing. Because if you don't like what you're seeing in the mirror, how does that translate in the bedroom?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to encourage them to sort of like, look, you didn't get into this, you didn't become engaged because the other person thought you were unattractive. That person really thinks you're attractive. And by your not being able to accept that, what does that say about you? And so one of the things I'm going to be working on that particular situation is that helping them become closer to each other not only in terms of communication and trust, but also being able to help them feel more comfortable together inside and outside the bedroom. Now, I have another couple I've been working with for a long time. They came to me because she had an affair that was mostly non-sexual, but not totally. Come to find out, she had issues about feeling abandoned based on childhood experiences, and he felt like he wasn't lovable, also based on childhood experiences. Which brings into mind how I often emphasize that what happens, the traumas that we experience in childhood don't go away. At best, they're put under the rug, and then they come up in the most unfortunate situations, and and they get triggered by whatever the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, it was sort of what happened between them was allowed all these issues to come up to the surface. They were buried down deep, and then this just triggered both of them. And so we were able to get them to talk about why things happened the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big believer in things don't happen in a vacuum. There's a reason why people do things. And understanding the reasons behind that often helps to be able to enhance the relationship in the long run and strengthen it.
Now, what would you say for couples out there? Everyone has a root issue, a root cause. Do you seek the individual counseling first then for something like this? Or, tell me what normally would happen, because
well, traditionally what I do is I see them as a couple. If I think it would help to, and it's not unusual, I will see each of them individually, not, on an ongoing basis, but, to sort of like see if there's anything that's going on that they haven't been comfortable in talking to me in front of their partner. And then, with the idea, it's like I quite often will ask them and say, okay, maybe it's time for you to bring this specific issue up. And then if they feel comfortable with it, or letting me know when they do feel comfortable with it, and then we can then talk about it. Because I don't think not talking about it doesn't help.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get whatever is going on out there, because otherwise it could, no matter how many sessions you go through, if we're not dealing with all the issues that brought you in here in the first place,
Then
you're going to be ending up wasting your time in the long run. So, and the whole idea is to resolve whatever is going on in your relationship that brought you here, and be able to help resolve those issues, and be able to come up with a way of helping, enhancing, and making your relationship stronger in the long run.
beautifully said. Well, thank you. So obviously the importance of counseling. Can a lot of relationships be saved? With your work, with the couple's work, with your work, do you find that a lot of people after infidelity, after something like you mentioned with your clients, can you work through that, resolve those root cause issues, and move on to a happy, normal relationship?
I've had a pretty good batting average. I'm not going to tell you that I've been able to save every relationship. I wish I could. But it really comes down to how much the couple wants to work on the issues involved. One of the things that I think I knew this before I even started this, but one of the things I think is the toughest thing to resolve is a breakage of trust. That being able to reestablish that is very, very difficult in many cases, simply because once it's broken, there's always the question in your mind, back in your mind, will he or she do whatever it was that ended up creating a problem in the relationship in the first place. And it doesn't necessarily mean just an affair. It could be how money is spent, or whether they're using poor judgments consistently, in decisions that they make in life. Whatever the issue is, trust is earned.
Yeah.
And in the long run, and if you do something that's going to make you question whether you can trust that person, obviously there's a problem. And if you decide to come in for counseling, that's what we got to figure out, how we can basically reestablish it and whether it can be reestablished.
Mm-hmm. And what else do you want to share about relationships and couples and the work you do and the importance to our listeners today about how you can help them?
Let's see. One of the things I've been working with a couple, and I'm trying to get, they've been together for 18 years, and it's been, based on what I'm hearing, it's been 18 years of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
When it's good, but when it's bad, it's not good at all. And it comes down to how badly do they want to save the relationship. Part of it, there was definitely a lot of verbal abuse going on. And if the person is being verbally abused, how much does that person want to, do they really want to save the relationship, or have they had enough? I'm a big believer in 7-year, every 7 years going through a transition. You sort of like evaluate where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. And it's amazing. In this particular case, they've been married for 18 years. And they're going into the third round of their 7-year transition. And I basically told them, I said, we need to figure out how you guys are going to continue, or the third round could be the final time you're together.
Yeah. Because
this can't continue the way it is. Because and the other thing is, their kids are getting to a point where they're going to be, one's already an adult and the other one's going to be an adult within a few years. So the effect on them is going to be, comparatively speaking, minimal. So and this is, we're basically transitioning now into the empty nest, where it's just going to be the two of them. And so what happens then? Are you going to be able to tolerate each other then? Are you going to be able to have a relationship that they're both happy with?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the questions that they need to answer for themselves. And so that's so the relationship, the relationship itself, the rules of that relationship have to be basically restated, and some of the stuff that was tolerated can no longer be tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you can't abuse, at least in one case, and I suspect there's always a response to that. You've got to learn how a different way of communicating with each other, understanding that you're going to have your disagreements from time to time, but not let it get into a full out, knockdown, drag out fight, whereas you're screaming at each other. That just can't continue. So.
Wow. Well, see, I have no relationship experience as far as in the marriage department, but I've been in relationships. I'm in a relationship with a significant other, and there are times that things are hard, easy, but in the long run, you have to conquer that somehow. I've never, been married, had to work through a marriage to make things better, but I find a lot of people kind of grow apart, not together. Is that true? And
absolutely.
Things change about the other person sometimes that they may not like about you, or you don't like about them. And that's an issue. But relationships are tricky. I haven't nailed that one down yet. So you're the expert here. You have to keep speaking on it.
Yeah. Well, my philosophy is you understand, when people come into a relationship, you're coming from two different worldviews. Mm-hmm. Two different ways of looking at things, because we come from different families, different cultures, really. And so how we perceive things from our partner may be totally different. And so the wonderful thing about it, at the same time challenging thing, is to be able to meld the two differing points of view into a relationship that the two of you, while you may not agree on everything, you agree on most things.
Got it.
If you agree on the big things, that's a good sign. if you are planning on having kids, how you raise those kids. Quite often it helps if you, even though you may be on two different political, by the way, my wife was a Republican when I married her, was.
What happened?
But,
Did she change or is she still?
oh, well, yeah, but here's the funny thing about that. Her family looked at me as being, basically meathead.
Yes. Oh,
and one of her uncles, I don't know if you know anything about New Haven, but Dixwell Avenue is a heavily black section of New Haven. And he would ask me, I said, well, so how's things on Dixwell Avenue? And I said, they're fine. Everything's going fine. Because he's like, I'm from the city, quote unquote. And my wife grew up in Cheshire, which is a basically country. It was country at that time. She grew up on a farm. And so we had totally different ways of looking at the world. She was taught that, being a Republican meant they were better than anybody else who wasn't a Republican. Mm. And so, but I showed her a different side of the world. She said one of the things that amazed her was that I ordered steak in a restaurant. She had never experienced anyone doing that.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. Yeah. And so we didn't really talk much about politics. It was like the political stuff really was with my mother-in-law, and I really didn't really get into it too deep. She had one aunt that was she was a Democrat, who was a big Kennedy fan, and I loved her. Uh-huh. I really did. We used to play cards and everything. And when she passed, that was a big loss to me, because I felt like one of the few people in the family I can really understood where I was coming from, so anyway, we met in college, and I remember the first day she came into an English class. She hadn't come to the first class because her grandfather had passed away, and it's like I remember it to this, like it was yesterday. And I looked at her, and I swear to God, I was thinking, we just might get married.
And here you go. Wow.
So, and then, I guess as to say, the rest is history. We actually introduced my best friend to a friend of hers, and they got married. And we had another friend that we introduced to somebody that my wife knew from Cheshire, and they got married. So I was best man at his wedding. But my best friend and I used to follow each other, I swear to God. And we would be late at night going home, dog tired. We had to get up early in the morning because he used to work at Hummel Brothers, which is a meat processing plant. And keeping each other awake just so we could get home safely.
Yep. Aww.
And the one I told, the second friend I told you about, he and his wife have passed away, unfortunately. But my best friend and his wife are still going strong. So.
Aww. See, I like how you lit up there talking about your own personal life and experience and relationships. So we all have that we bring to the table, clearly. The good, the bad, the
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. But it's communication is key. And how did you want to leave off today's show, Thomas, about you relationships, about your services? But what else would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you're going through a tough time, my door is open. I'd love to talk to you and help you get through it. Bottom line is, we all go through our ups and downs. I don't want you to ever think that there's ever a time in any relationship where you're not going to have some difficulties got to work through.
Yep.
I already mentioned the 7-year transition periods. It's not just a 7-year itch. I really do think it's a real thing, and the reason is because we change as we get older. We talked about, people moving apart. That's true. That can happen. Relationships, people can drift apart. But I also see it as sort of like you go through you sort of drift apart and come together and go like this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the reason and our goals change as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to work with anybody wherever they are in the relationships and hopefully help them establish a happier relationship in the long run. Bottom line.
Great. And how do we reach out to you?
Again, you can reach out to me by my phone number, 203-917-7674. And my email address is tabergvik@gmail.com. And it's Bergvik Counseling Services, LLC.
Great. Thank you so much. And
all right.
You have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
And I will see you next week.
All right, good. Sounds good. Hope you feel better. Okay. Take care of that ankle.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.